Women have never been more prolific or influential in the Australian legal industry, and for many, it's a labour of learning and sacrifice. But does that mean we need to do it alone? Not anymore. This podcast by the Mentor Institute will unlock the potential of women in the workplace by tapping into the incredible experiences of successful professional women. Our founder, legal entrepreneur Val Pitt, believes mentoring is about embracing the success of a few to breed the success of many. She created the Mentor Institute to link with those who want to mentor and those who want to be a mentor in a new and unique platform for leadership. So, join your host, Jade Toomey, as she chats to sophisticated women across the country and meet the legal ladies, some of the most inspiring women in law.
It takes a lot of heart and plenty of resilience to be a family lawyer in today's Australia, and Zoe Durand certainly has both of those. Having worked as a lawyer in large national private practice firms for more than 12 years, Zoe's got plenty of insight into what makes family law tick and what stops it ticking. She's also the author of Inside Family Law, one of the first books that lets readers in on exclusive interviews with senior judges and lawyers about the state of the industry, as well as the host of the Family Law podcast of the same name. The most striking thing about Zoe, though, is her incredible passion for women in law. Perhaps that's why she founded Women's Nexus, a professional women's networking group for those in the legal world. And despite her many commitments, contacts and upcoming projects, Zoe was kind enough to join us on the phone to give us a bit of a look into who she is, how she got there, and the advice she has for those joining her in the profession. Welcome and thanks so much for joining us, Zoe.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's start with perhaps what the biggest driving force behind your entry into law is, and why family law?
It's one of those funny things. I mean, I always had an interest in law when I was in school. In fact, I came across some old, I think we had to write, which is a strange project, an autobiography at age, 12 or 13. And in it, I said, look, I have a really great interest in the law, and I have to be honest, maybe originally my perception of law was probably a bit warped, like all of us from TV shows and Law and Order and all that kind of stuff. And you do have those ideals, especially when you're young and you're a teenager and there's the injustice of the world and, you're drawn to law perhaps because of justice and all that sort of stuff and standing up for people. But that is also an aspect of it, of course, in reality, although it's not always quite as exciting as an episode of LA Law. So I was always attracted to law. In terms of why I did family law, I mean, that's a bit of a funny story. I actually was originally a commercial lawyer. So I was working for some major commercial law firms. I used to be Middleton's, then became K&L Gates. I also worked at HWL Ebsworth. And look, that was lovely, and I enjoyed that. And in a lot of ways, I sometimes think, it would have been a good path to stay on that in some ways. I had nice colleagues. It was a good career in many ways. But then I always felt this pull to kind of working with people. That's really where my heart and soul is social things and human issues and relationships. And so it wasn't, to be honest with you, necessarily had to be family law, but I realised that I really wanted to work with people, whether that was family or crime or something in that area. And then an opportunity came up to work in a family law firm, and so I took it.
And do you find that what you learn in uni as how you're meant to be a lawyer there is very different to being a lawyer in practice?
Look, it is very different. I think what you learn in university is legal reasoning, and that definitely has its place. So it's good to learn that legal reasoning, how to analyse case law, and you need those skills. But the practical sort of skills of how to be a lawyer, yes, there certainly is some difference, and you learn a lot of that on the job. I kind of think where perhaps we could, improve as lawyers is looking at the other sort of side of the business side of it. And that might sound a bit terrible and capitalistic, but the reality is obviously it's a profession and, you need to take the professional side of it very seriously, but you need to also understand the business side, how to grow it as a business. All that sort of stuff market, some basic understanding of marketing, branding, how to network, the number of times I go to functions and you get someone's details. I mean, I always contact them and just say, hey, it was nice to meet you, whatever. But so many people, if you didn't contact them, they'd never contact you. The number of people that do that, they go to a networking function, they don't even follow up. I think in law, there's a lot of people that you kind of want to sit behind a desk and paper push. But unfortunately, I think to survive in this profession, you need to have all those other skills around being a lawyer as well.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. And what about, women in particular? We see that there's plenty of law grads and people starting out at junior levels, but when we get to the senior levels, it's much less scarce. What do you make of that?
Oh, look, you know what? It's like, do we have an hour? I don't know. Like, it's a very complicated, there's a lot going on there. I mean, there's a huge history, obviously, there as well. There's a lot of push-pulls going on there. I remember once a male colleague of mine was like, women, they go and they have a baby and they go out of the workforce and they come back in. There's no sexism. That's all that's happening. And I was like, look, that's part of what's happening, but I think there is a bit more happening than that. I think that we're probably really talking about hidden things, structural kind of biases or sort of inherent biases that are very hard to kind of pick apart because they're sort of actually really in a way the norm, and so they kind of camouflage in. I mean, these are very hard things to even sometimes see. I think that like the whole way workplaces are structured, it is probably, especially in law, it can be difficult and challenging for women sometimes to progress. Let me give you a little example. Okay, I was reading in this magazine. I think it was a terrible magazine. I think it was like one of those really trashy kind of magazine, but it had actually a really good article, and it was talking about, it was sort of tracking a man and a woman who were both negotiating pay rises with their boss, and the man went in and he was like, well, I've done this, this, and this. Here are the 5 KPIs. This is how I've met them. I want a $20,000 pay rise. A to B to C to D. This is why I deserve it. And then they did sort of a follow-up interview with the boss afterwards, and he said, well, look, of course I gave him the pay rise. I felt like I had no choice but to. And then they did the woman. I mean, obviously this is just a sample size of 2, but I think there is some truth to this. And she was sort of like, I did okay, and this was all right. I didn't do that well here, and I don't know, just give me whatever pay rise you think's fair. And she got like some $5,000 pay rise or something. There's an interesting thing there. Like, on the one hand, I think as women, we do need to all, sort of learn to sort of maybe be more assertive in situations like that. At the same time, it's also a thing of listening. Like, if she had gone into that pay review and been exactly the same, presented exactly the same as her male colleague and said, well, I've done this, this, and this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's why I deserve a 20 grand pay rise, would her boss have responded, who was a man, would he have responded as favourably and given her the pay rise, or would he have just been like, I'm not giving you that pay rise, you're being really arrogant, or you're rubbing me the wrong way? So it's kind of a push-pull thing. Do you know what I mean? I think it's like, as women, yes, we can all sort of learn to be more assertive and go for things more. But then at the same time, maybe the reason we don't is because we know on some level we don't know how far we can take it. We don't know how well it will be received, or we're taught from a young age to not be boastful or not be sort of arrogant. And there's more boundaries around that for women than there are for men. Sorry, that was a very roundabout way, but I'm trying to does that make sense?
It sure does. I have a question. Do you think that women are inherently designed to doubt themselves in situations like that, whereas men are inherently inclined to believe in themselves?
Well, I was speaking, I don't know if it was with the recruiter, I've been speaking to a number of people about this, and they were saying that when it comes to like job applications, there has been some research around this. A woman will only apply for a job if she feels that, like, if they say, here are the 5 criteria we're looking for, or like desired criteria and essential criteria, in job ads. And a woman will usually only apply and go for a job if she thinks she has all of those criteria very well, like she's very qualified for that job. Whereas a guy will be like, I've got 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 and I'll just jump in here. Obviously, I'm generalising, but I do think sometimes the dudes have more of a kind of let's jump in and give it a go approach. And that, whether that's nurture or nature, whether or not it's because it goes back to something even as sort of primal and, as how we raise our little boys and how we raise our little girls. And we're more permissive with boys and more kind of like, girls have to be perfect and look perfect and be neat and tidy, and the boys can kind of jump in and give it a go and get messy. I don't know if it goes back to something even as basic as that, but I do sort of think that somehow we've created a situation where, and this is quite well sort of known, that women will often, within those job situations, wait till they're overqualified. I mean, look at like Hillary Clinton versus Trump. Trump's like, well, I don't really have any experience, but I'll just jump in and go for president. Like there is that kind of, so it's a kind of push-pull thing, as I said. Like, I'd love to see women kind of putting themselves out there for things more, giving it a go, even if it's not all perfect. And at the same time, I sometimes wonder if we expect more from women. Like some of my colleagues say, as a woman, you can't make as many stuff-ups. You have to be perfect. You have to be, women are held to a higher standard. And if they make a stuff-up, they're scrutinised more. I think there's something to that as well.
So we've talked about a lot of the barriers to women in law, but what do you think are some of the strengths of having women in the legal profession?
Oh, there's a lot of, I think there are definitely a lot of strengths to having women in the legal profession, as there are strengths to having men in the legal profession. Obviously, I'm not saying that there should be no men in the legal profession. I think it helps to have people from all different backgrounds, and, you're talking not just across gender lines, but across, ethnicity. That's another issue as well. And diversity in the law is a kind of, I think it would be better if that moved along a bit as well. I think diversity in the law generally and inclusion is a big issue, to be frank. When you're looking at gender as well as, other ways you can look at what a person is, who a person is. I think that obviously brings a more rounded perspective. I think that having a strength of having women in law is it just makes the law and the application of the law and just those hidden paradigms about the way things are done, I think, a lot more balanced. And also likewise, in other fields, apparently there's a lot more women teachers than male teachers. I'd love to see more male teachers in that area, because there might be hidden paradigms there about how we're educating kids, that's on the other side. I think having gender balance in fields makes it kind of goes some way to ameliorating all those hidden biases.
Now, you're not just, a hugely qualified lawyer, but you're also a published author as well. Can you give me a bit of an insight into, what drive you to start writing a book?
Okay. I thought that there were some fairly good resources in family law in terms of textbooks, which obviously is important too. We all need to read the cases and understand the law. In fact, that's hugely important. But I did feel that something that was lacking is kind of giving access to everyone to kind of the ability to be able to just have a coffee or have a lunch with a judge or a barrister or another expert in the field. Because working in family law, we all have access to each other, and we all go to these seminars and CLEs and have these really interesting discussions about what's working and what's not working in family law. But that general access to everyone being able to sort of have those discussions, that it wasn't there. I really wanted to bring something that was a kind of a conversation, so conversations at the coalface, those kind of conversations that I've been lucky to be part of for many years. I wanted to give back that power, give back that access to everyone. So that's why I created Inside Family Law, because it really is like those interviews were done over lunch, or a drink in a bistro, with an expert. So it's really giving back the access to people that are normally perhaps people perceive as inaccessible, giving everyone access to that. And that's why I did that, because I wanted to really, I think, there is an issue with family law being perhaps a bit difficult to access sometimes, or people think it's difficult to access, and I wanted to make it more accessible, and I wanted to demystify the law as well. So that's why I created that book.
What sort of feedback have you gotten?
Feedback, okay, so mainly positive. Mainly positive. People say, look, it is good. It really feels like you are just having a lunch with a judge or a Chapter 15 expert. So largely positive. There has been some controversial feedback from it, I think, in some of the ways it was presented in the media, just being honest about it. And that's going to happen. When you do something that is, that was the first book of its kind to really present those kind of conversations that are really raw and really candid in that form. And so, most people were really happy about it and it was well received, and some people were not happy about it. And that's just kind of what it is. I think to put something out in the world, you can't expect everyone to, to like it. Some people will like it and some people won't, but mainly positive.
I'm sure that the type of people who are reading this book are going to have critical minds by default. So Now my next question is, you're a hugely qualified lawyer, a published author, and you've got your own women's networking body as well. Now, do you ever resent the question work-life balance and how you manage it?
You know what? This is a question I've been asking myself recently. I actually think I need to take a couple of months off. Look, I'm being honest about it. I'm not perfect when it comes to work-life balance. And to be honest, I actually think a number of things here. I really believe we all need to take better care of ourselves, and I'm including myself in that. And I think I'm far from having got that balance right, okay? And at the same time, I don't know that kind of a traditional understanding of work-life balance is that helpful, especially in like the legal world, because we get intensely busy and you might have a trial or you might have sort of a spate of a lot of work or a project to finish. And honestly, if you just did like a 9-to-5 day, it just wouldn't ever happen. Okay. Then at the same time, there needs to be some kind of balance overall. So I don't know that you can have like every single day is like a metronome of perfect balance, but then maybe what you can achieve is kind of balance overall, like as in you might have a busy couple of weeks or a busy month, and then the next month try and take it really easy. Take a day off, I mean, I've dropped my daughter off to daycare, and today I don't plan on really doing too much work at all. I'm just going to have a day to myself. So I don't have a balance every day, but I think what I'm trying to work towards is at least having a balance throughout the course of a year, like a busy month, a quiet month, and just balancing it more that way. Like, that's just being honest. But I do think there is a space in my life, and I think a lot of people, I think there is, we're all a little bit overworked. And that is something I'm interested in, is how we can kind of fit in more balance to our days and more wellness and more self-care. Because I think it's something I've struggled with personally over the years. And I think a lot of that comes from, like it's kind of like, I've got to get to that yoga class or whatever, that 1 hour yoga class or that 1 hour whatever, or the gym, and it just gets unattainable. And I think that there's some work to be done on kind of making wellness and self-care more accessible again, and sort of more seamlessly integrating it into the way we work in the modern world.
Do you think then that law firms and I guess legal counsel departments and courtrooms even need to, be a little bit more focused on flexible working?
Look, I think the flexible working is something, and I think also just people, we all know that it's good to say get up and have a stretch, or good to do, a mindfulness breathing meditation, or good to do all this sort of stuff. But it's just actually making it happen in a real way, I think, has been a challenge for a long time. There's like a disconnect between what people want to do, and I fall into this. I'm guilty of this. I'm like, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to take better care of myself. And then actually doing it, I think, is a struggle for a lot of working women and working men, to be honest. Flexible work, I think that is a major issue. And I'm going to say something here that, I don't know, not controversial, but I think it's a major issue for women, but I also think it's a major issue for men. And in fact, the two are inextricably linked, because and I'm really passionate about this, I think that there needs to be more social acceptance for men working part-time as well, because that will be also what sort of facilitates women and in going forward in their career. Not that everyone's heterosexual, but I'll give you an example. Like my friend, she's a partner in a law firm, and after she had her child, it was only because her husband was able to work part-time, he's also very senior in another law firm, that allowed her to kind of really progress in her career. You know what I mean? So the two are really interlinked. Like, we need to look at women's flexible work, and we also really need to give a real go to men's flexible work, and just allowing families to construct like how they're all going to move forward in their careers together. Otherwise, women, and there's nothing wrong with working part-time. I mean, I'm actually probably, I'd say, working part-time in a way. Like, I don't, there are days I just have my little girl with me, and there's nothing wrong with that innately. But what does kind of annoy me is that it's like women have to work part-time. Like, what if they want to work full-time? And then to do that, they would then perhaps, and if that's what works for them and their family, they'd need the male partner, if they are, in a man-woman relationship, they'd need the male partner to then perhaps work part-time, if that's what he was happy to do too. But people can't always do that, because it's not like socially acceptable for a man to work part-time, and companies don't get it, or law firms don't get it, And so I think that needs to change. I think we need to open it all up. Let's just shake off the dust and kind of open our eyes and try and sort of think in a more modern way about all these things.
And you sound, incredibly passionate about where women should be sitting in law firms. And so what is it about women's networking in the legal industry that's important to getting us there? Well,
you know what they say, you're either networking or you're not working. I mean, networking, I think, is hugely important. And then, look, it has a bit of a bad rap, because people think, it sounds wanky and you're not authentic if you're networking and all this sort of stuff. But in the end, I mean, you can still be genuine in it. And look, I'll say this genuine thing. I won't actually bother to get a lunch with someone, or some really spending like an hour or two with them, if I don't feel a good vibe from them as well, and I don't actually like who they are as a person. So you can still be genuine in it and spend time with people that you actually like. It's just about seeking out like-minded people, within your field. And obviously it is different. It's not exactly the same as like maybe, friendship, but it is still built on trust, I think. And that's sort of what people don't always understand. I mean, whatever field you work in, whether it's, finance or law or whatever it is, we're building relationships based on trust. And it's about, if you're looking at cross referrals, it's about, do you trust that person to take care of the person you're referring to them? So it really is, it comes down to trust, and trust takes time to build up. And I think it's not always like the first time you meet someone, they're going to trust you to maybe give you a client or a cross referral. And those things do take time.
Do you think the same can be said about mentoring?
Mentoring, well, look, mentoring is hugely important, and there's different ways, obviously, you can go about it. There's actual official programs, I think, through the Law Society where you can get assigned a mentor. And I've had friends who've had really got a lot out of that. And other times you can get mentors just through, it sort of happens more organically, I suppose. Like, I've had a few mentors over the years who you just sort of meet, and then somehow it's got to be mutual. They take an interest in you and in your career, and they want to help you grow and develop, which is a really nice and generous thing to do. So, look, I think that's, it's about wanting to help the next generation rise in your field, which some people, not everyone's that generous, and some people are very generous though. So it's about finding someone who takes that interest in you. Obviously, you can't just sort of force it to happen. It's got to be a mutual thing. But I think if you can get some good mentors, and I have been lucky to have some great mentors who've really helped me, then you're really lucky.
What sort of things did, one or two of them or a couple of them teach you?
Well, I think for the mentors, look, they've all taught me a lot of little things about, career and career strategy. And but what they really did, and look, there's different types of mentors. There's the mentors that are teaching you things. There's the mentors that are like your champion. They'll champion for you. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I was reading about this somewhere. There's like different kind of mentors. But I've had some mentors that have really helped me with projects that were pivotal for my career. Like, for example, the Honourable Peter Rose, who, I know this is a women's thing, but he's a dude, and he's been a great mentor to me. He was the first person that agreed to be interviewed for my book, Inside Family Law. And, the thing is, and I'm the same, we're all so conservative in law. It's like no one wants to do anything unless they know, like, who else is doing it. So everyone else I asked was like, well, who else is doing it? And so because he was the first, I'm like, well, can I interview? He's like, oh, yeah, sure, no worries. And then after that, I could say to people, well, the Honourable Peter Rose is going to be interviewed. Then they were like, oh, I'll do it. So he was that first one to back me. You just need that one person who's going to back you and believe in you and champion you. And then all the other people will sort of follow suit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, stick their neck out for you for sure.
Yeah, someone else stick their neck out for you. And he has really been that for me. Like, he stuck his neck out for me a few times, and I really appreciate that.
What about as a young lawyer, as a graduate? What sort of people did you look up to?
Who did I look up to? Well, look, as a grad, I was more in commercial law firms, and there were certainly some amazing partners that I worked with. If you're talking more about like in the family law field, some people I look up to, obviously Robin Sexton, who was a judge of the Federal Circuit Court. I think she is amazing. I really respect the work she's done, and I also respect that she's continuing to be active since retirement from the bench. I mean, she's still mediating, but she's doing a lot of really amazing work, and she started the Indigenous list to help make family law more accessible for Aboriginal Australians. I think that's really important. So she's really quite, even though she's a judge and people have the idea that judges are sort of more conservative, she's very forward-thinking and very progressive. I think that's great. And she's also got time, she'll make time for you, like, her and I catch up sometimes, and she's also someone who's supported and helped me. I think we had Meredith Gordon, who's another really amazing family lawyer. She came and spoke once at Women's Nexus, and she was really fantastic as well, very candid, very open, and honest about her struggles, that she'd had in her career and also her triumphs. And I remember her saying, and I'll never forget this, she said, you work hard, you do the right thing by people, and it will all work out. She's like, I promise you it will all work out, because we all get so anxious about our careers sometimes. But she was just like, you work hard, you do the right thing by people, and it will all, in the long run, it will work out. And so that was really good to hear that. And Dr. Catherine Boland, I think, is great too from the relations space in the family law field. She's not a lawyer, but she's a Chapter 15 expert witness. She's doing some really good work, again, innovating in the field, and has created an online program to help families who have separated. So, I think that there's some women I look up to.
They sound like incredible role models, but you mentioned as well Women's Nexus. Tell me a little bit about that.
Basically, it's a face-to-face women's networking group. We keep it, a small group, so, 20, 30 people a max are allowed per meeting. We try and get really amazing, inspiring women. So we've had Dr. Boland come and speak. We had Meredith Gordon. We had Judge Sexton, as she was then, come and speak. And because it's a small group, it's a different kind of thing. Like, it's not like in it's very informal, and you can really, it's like having a cup of tea with she was then Judge Sexton, and you can really pick her brains and just have that personal kind of contact with the speakers, which I think is really important. It's a networking group, but it's also about, we want it to be inspirational, which is why we have the speakers rather than just kind of speed networking. That's what we do, and everyone's welcome to come along and join in. If you want to find out more about it, you can get in touch with me. I'm Zoe Durand on LinkedIn, so just find me and say hello.
One last question, which, might be hard towards the end of a podcast, but what is the biggest mistake that you've made in your career?
The biggest mistake I've made in my career? Look, I've made a ton of mistakes. It's not that I haven't made mistakes. I'm just trying to recall, there was one, colossal mistake that was really bad. And I'm sure I'm thinking of a few, but I'm wondering if I can say them publicly. Look, I think when you're a young lawyer, and look, this is a bit controversial, I think sometimes you really put up with things that you should not put up with. I see a lot of, and it's going to refer to specific kind of, and it's not that I haven't made mistakes. I've definitely made all the mistakes, but it's just when I'm thinking about certain examples, it brings in controversy and brings in things with other people. So I don't really want to go into it, but I can speak in a general sense. And let me just say that I've definitely made all the mistakes. And I think that you make quite a lot when you're a young lawyer in terms of just putting up with things that you shouldn't put up with, letting people cross boundaries they shouldn't cross, and not speaking up. But then it's hard because you are a junior in a firm and there's a lot of power imbalances too, so it's hard to know when you can speak up. As lawyers, and I'm like this too, a bit, we all feel sort of so risk adverse sometimes, but sometimes you do need to take risks in your career. I think I have taken those risks, but maybe I sort of sat in bad situations too long before taking a risk and making a change. When I look back at it, I can definitely see that. But all I can say is, what I'd say is this about mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, okay? I've made mistakes. Everyone I know has made mistakes. It's more kind of do you learn from them, and are you going to be able to bounce back, and are you going to be able to kind of move past that and kind of pick up your beans and keep rolling, or are you going to let that completely crush you? And I think that's all I'd say about that. But don't worry, you're going to make mistakes. Just accept it, because I can tell you we've all made a ton of mistakes in our career.
There's some powerful reflections there, I think.
And honestly, that's how you learn in your career as well.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely an important lesson to learn.
And again, it's a push-pull thing. I don't want to be overly critical and say, look, I just say I've noticed this trend, and it's one of those subtle things that, you kind of, it's very subtle. It's quite hidden, and it's because it's kind of the norm. It's everywhere I just see it's only women that are hashtag blessed. I think you remember you and I were speaking about this. The women are hashtag blessed, and it's the women that are having careers that are happy accidents. I often see women frame their career in terms of, it was a happy accident. And I'm not saying that there aren't parts of your career that are accidental, and, not everything can be kind of planned and controlled. And certainly in my career, things have come up. But I think look, there's a few things going on there. Firstly, I would love to see women just being, I guess, able to be more open about the fact that they might have career strategy, the fact that they are ambitious, the fact that they've got big dreams for their career, that not everything is a happy accident, that maybe they've fought really hard for things and they've worked really hard for things. Because if your whole career is a happy accident, then where's the blueprint for other women to kind of follow in your footsteps? They can't, because it's an accident. Do you know what I mean? And so I think what would really help other women and move things forward is to just be honest about it and say, look, parts of it where things came up and accidental, and other parts I worked damn hard for where I got to. I had a career strategy. No, that doesn't make me Lady Macbeth. But women are allowed to have career strategies, and then they're also allowed to be proud of their accomplishments. They can be, and I'd love for us all to feel blessed and lucky. It's nothing wrong with saying hashtag blessed, but you can also just, sometimes women are saying that when what they want to say is, I'm proud. I've worked really hard for this, and I'm really proud of myself that I achieved this. But see, people don't always want to see a woman be proud, and they don't want to see a woman with career strategy. So as much as I'm saying I like to see women kind of move that forward, I do understand it's push-pull, and there is this kind of thing in society that there's almost like this sort of shadow of an apology when you see a successful woman. She's got to be apologetic about her success. It's kind of, I think Princess Diana once said something about this. She was saying when women reach powerful positions in society, there's a lot lot of suspicion around it. It's like, well, how did she get that power? Where did it come from? Who did she have to take from to get it? And so to kind of ameliorate that kind of suspicion around powerful women, I think women, that's why they sometimes say, this all could be subconscious. That might be why they say, oh, it was a happy accident. Oh, I just fell into this. I sort of woke up one day and I was CEO, because they kind of sort of be non-threatening, and they don't want to be intimidating, and they want to sort of calm those suspicions. So, there's work for women to do, for us together, for us all to kind of speak up and sort of just say, look, hey, I worked really hard for this. I had a career strategy. Here's how I did it. So I can help other women learn from how I've done it. But also there's a place for us as a society, and this includes women, also men, being open to women having career strategy and having ambitions and big dreams for themselves. And that doesn't mean that they're, as I said, Lady Macbeth, and that it's okay for women to be in powerful positions. So my last little thing that I want to go on about.
Well said, honestly. We couldn't have finished on a better note, I don't think.
Well, thanks very much. It's been lovely chatting with you.
It's been great. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Zoe.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been Legal Ladies, and we've been chatting with family law lawyer Zoe Durand, who's also the author of book Inside Family Law and the podcast by the same name. To find out more, check out the link on the Mentor Institute and stay tuned for our next episode with the next Legal Lady.